Total blackout. Now, what does that mean? It's not what you think. They're saying Friday there will be a blackout, a retail blackout, meaning there is a boycott against this president and his administration. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Also, we'll discuss, where is the gold? Is the gold truly in Fort Knox? Now remember, there's been plenty of stories bunking, debunking, saying it's there, it's not there, but we actually hadn't had a true full audit in over 100 years. The 70s was not a full audit. It was a portion audit. We'll discuss the ramifications of the gold. And we'll talk about a bank that is, hauling in gold because of the dangers of what they've promised for this economy. Also, they warn that there's dangerous days ahead in the market. We're going to hear from a billionaire again and saying, look, if we don't see more cuts than what we're doing, it's going to be dangerous. Elon and Trump are doing good, but he said they're not doing enough. Actually, two monster players in the market said that. So truthfully, where the Democrats are not wanting to cut much, even the Rhino Republicans are not wanting to cut much, these billionaires who have lived the market says he's not cutting enough. They better start cutting a whole lot more. And also we're going to discuss how much we've been let down. What did the Republicans just pass in the Congress? And you'd think that we were happy. We were winning. Are we really winning? Who needs enemies when you have friends like this? We say it's good, but there's promises that you hear, oh, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Honestly, it's not really in this bill. Now, they can make assumptions for it, but it's not really in the bill. And actually, it adds spending to the deficit for the next 2 years, and really for the next decade. One man stood against it, Thomas Massie. Again, if we're in such dire straits, why is your Congress spending so much money? Let's dive into these stories and a few more. This video starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to The Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. Please go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up if you like the content of today's video. Our goal is to give you information that can help you be wise, and as we try to go through this world, have a common sense approach to the craziness that we live in. Now let's jump into the stories of the day. First, let's talk about this total blackout. There's been a story revolving around in liberal circles, and with this way that they're looking at, we're going to have a protest on Friday. It says the People's Union of USA is calling for a national boycott, in which includes no spending on fast food, gas, or major retailers such as Amazon and Walmart, or even Best Buy, beginning midnight of February 27th through midnight of February 28th. It says that we need to quit spending so then we can show Trump and this leadership how we really feel about this economy. Now, there may be some good things in here. We shouldn't be eating fast food anyway, or shopping at just major retailers instead of mom and pops. But what the problem with this whole situation is, I think every side of this battle seems like it's sucking it up. America's economy is literally faltering, and the Republicans in Congress are wanting to spend more than we have. Again, it's funny because what happens with Congress is who can spend the less to impress the voters. To be honest with you, they shouldn't be spending at all right now. We're in a deficit. But they are. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what this is showing is they're wanting to cut off retail to bring awareness to the firings, awareness to all the stuff that's going on with Trump firing people in the government. Now, let's go to what Ray Dalio and Kevin Leary both said. Again, big players in business, entrepreneurs, a billionaire investor, of course. Both of them are saying, look, what people don't realize, if you really get down to the nuts and bolts of this thing, what we're cutting is not actually enough. Kevin O'Leary and Ray Dalio both said it's encouraging to see what they're doing. And I know they're getting pushback because they're firing a lot of people. But both of them said, sadly, they're not doing enough. We've got to get into the ultra billions and trillions of cutting, or this economy won't make it. JP Morgan just warned that there will be very heavy, volatile times ahead. Their exact words, and quoted, said, another uncomfortable day is going to happen today and the days incoming. We are seeing the market technically, quote unquote, break down. Now, why are they saying that? They're saying that because the fact of course, gold is skyrocketing and the talk of gold. And I'm going to tell you another story about what JP Morgan is doing with their gold. It's unbelievable. But what they're saying is, if we don't get a hold of the economy, then we're going to see it literally falter. Now, the problem is this. What did we talk about a few days ago? Because we're cutting, and because our economy has been running on debt for so long, we're going to feel those ramifications of the cutting. Now, the thing is, we're not cutting enough. So you have to have a balancing act of trying to cut as much as you can, along with not making the economy fail, because our economy was based on debt. It's driven by debt and consumer spending and the fact of public spending, which means government giving money out like it's crazy. So this is where you get to that new law that we're just talking about with the Republicans, how they're trying to win your vote and tell you they're working for you, promises made, promises kept. I don't actually see that in this bill, and we'll talk about what Thomas Massey just said. What we're seeing with JP Morgan is they're saying this market is so volatile, and the only reason the market was pretty much stabilized and held up this last administration was because of the public spending. Well, because we're not public spending anymore, we're seeing the market struggle, especially with the talks of tariffs and the talks of gold shortages. JP Morgan is actually the one that's doing a lot of the transport of gold from London to New York. Now, people are saying, where is the gold? Is the gold really there? I mean, is this some kind of hidden agenda of what they're doing, is bringing all this gold over? No, actually what it is America's gold prices went up so much that it's actually topped Europe's gold. So what they're having to do is they're having to buy the gold from Europe to then turn around and bring it over here, so therefore they can have it again to try to beat out the tariffs, but ultimately be able to cover themselves because of the shorts they've made on gold. And also, they didn't really hedge enough gold based on the price that it is at now. So JP Morgan is bringing tons, I mean literally tons of gold over. Now what's coincidental is you're hearing the talks of gold with Trump and Elon talking about taking a camera in there and auditing Fort Knox. I think this could be, I mean, of course we need to know the truth for sure, and we're hoping it's there. Because if it's not there, if this gold is not there, and I know there's been stories in the 70s and 80s where they used to pay for wartime efforts. Eisenhower, they said, used to pay for wartime efforts. Actually, before Mnuchin went in 2017, did you know that the Treasury Secretary hadn't been in there for over like 50 to 60 years at that point? So it's truly been about 50 or 60 years since a Treasury Secretary had been in there to audit it. Mnuchin went in McConnell actually, but they didn't actually audit. They just went and looked at it. In the 70s, they did an audit, but it was not a full audit. It was partially doing about 60 to 70% of it. But actually checking the actual value of it was not done. So now we're seeing a few things. We're seeing the market struggle, like JP Morgan said. We're seeing the fact that billionaire investors are telling us we're not cutting enough. We're seeing the fact that we're worried about our gold, and if our gold is not there, I think it's going to send this economy into a death spiral. And then you also see gold is being brought over to America. So that's a lot taking place dealing with our economy. Now let's see something else that's happening. Central banks buying up all this gold is actually going to bring gold to all-time high. Again, one thing we realized, and I know people say, well, our money's not backed by gold anymore. But Rand Paul made a comment years ago. He said it's not about saying that our money is still backed by gold, but that it is still the most tangible, highly sought after item when it comes to currency, gold. So he said, if you don't have it, even if our money is not backed on it, he said it will take our money if we don't have the gold sitting in Fort Knox. If we don't have gold coming into this country, then we're going to see struggles. So do I think we need to audit this and make sure that all our gold is where it's supposed to be? Yes, I do. I think the only way forward to actually control our debt, and I'm going to say this not including Congress now, but truthfully, the only way to heal our debt problem, we can't pay it off. Did you know, listen to this, we have $36 trillion worth of debt. Did you know we only have I think it was like 22 or 23 trillion dollars in currency around the world, dollars, that is available? So if we took all our money, we confiscated everybody's money in the world that had dollar bills, we still would be short around 14, 15 trillion dollars in a debt. So it shows we don't even have enough money to pay off our debts. We don't. We don't even have enough dollars to pay off our debts that we have in dollars. Isn't that crazy? So if we don't have enough money, the only way to actually fix it is a reset using gold. And I think that's why you're hearing all this talk of gold. You see crypto's falling, it's not going to make it. I think that's speculative, and I think over time everybody's going to look back one day and say, what was I thinking investing in crypto? But I digress. I think what you're seeing with this talks of gold and all these banks like JP Morgan and like the central banks buying into gold more and stockpiling it more, I think they're all realizing the writing on the wall is that if we don't get a handle on our debt, we're going to see a faltering economy. The only way to fix our economy, though, is to reset it based on gold. Now, that's my opinion, but I actually think that's what they're doing when they're purchasing all this gold. And I think that's why Trump and Elon are both talking about auditing the gold. Now, the biggest issue, if the gold is not there, our economy will be in a free fall. No doubt. That will happen. You won't have an economic blackout Friday. You will have an economic blackout for years and years and years. Because they know without that gold and without the trust of the people across the world seeing that gold is there or not, I think that you're going to see the dollar plummet if that happened. Now, here's what needs to happen. Audit needs to happen with the gold. Yeah, hopefully it's all there. If it's all there, they need to reevaluate the gold off the $42, $43 range and actually put it up where it's worth. And they say they don't do that, but gold right now is around $2,900. If they would reevaluate that gold, get it up to where it's supposed to be, I think it would help our economy tremendously. And I think if we really saw the value of gold and really allocated it like it's supposed to be and revalued it, we could assume a lot of our debt and reset a lot of our economy by using gold and reestablish our money based on that. And I think that would help us get rid of some of the debts. I think we should do in-kind things like talk to Japan about all the coverage of military that we do for them that they don't pay us for. So I think that would help us pay off some debts that we owe to Japan. And same thing, I think we need to negotiate a lot of those things. The mineral rights deal for Trump, I think it's a great move for Ukraine. I don't like Ukraine. I think there's going to be peace very soon because of some of these other deals. But that's the kind of things that we need to negotiate. Negotiate trade better. We need to reevaluate our gold, and we need to make sure that we are getting things that are tangibly worth something to us. I would love to see Trump and his administration get away from crypto. I wish they'd push away from it. I think it's just all, I think it's a scam. And I think that the more that they try to embrace it, the worse our dollar's going to get. Even, I mean, now, for instance, they're trying to embrace crypto, and it's literally in a free fall. Now, let's go to the Congress, and this is where I really want to pay attention to. And I've been really pushing on the Congress lately, but there's a purpose, because I want to kind of go over some of the things that Congress just talked about. There was one lone congressman that did not vote for the bill, and it was, of course, Thomas Massie. It says the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a budget resolution known as the Con Res 14. Continuing resolution, which outlines a plan that could lead to significant cuts to Medicaid and SNAP and other welfare programs. Now, I know people are pushing back on that, but to be honest with you, if the government is broke, we can't keep funding all these social programs that we can't afford anymore. There should be better, like inspector generals or DOE's commission that would make sure this money is being spent wisely and get the fraud out of it. And then I think that would actually make those programs work better. It says this resolution passed with 217 to 215, largely supported by Republicans, but one voting Republican against it, which was Massie. The budget aims to balance the offering tax cuts primarily benefiting the wealthy. Now, that's a talking point and a skew. I believe it will benefit companies, and I mean it will benefit most Americans who are paying the most taxes, no doubt. But here's where I want you to listen to, and this is where you gotta really dive into these things. Even though the Republicans are telling you that the promises made and the promises kept doing the agenda of Trump, and remember, this is how they con you. It says that they are trying to remove the taxes on tips and overtime taxing and Social Security. However, there is nothing verbatim in wording in this bill that truly says that that's what's going to happen. Now, they spin it. Republicans are doing a good job of spinning this bill, and I believe Trump will sign it, sadly. But I want you to listen to what Thomas Massie just said. The GOP budget extends the 5-year tax holiday we've been enjoying. But because it doesn't cut spending much, it increases the deficit by $300 billion a year compared to letting tax cuts expire. Over 10 years, this budget will add $20 trillion to the U.S. debt. He said, so as a conservative, how can you conserve by signing this bill? One lone Republican. Now again, I know that he's not probably the biggest Trump supporter. I understand that. But here's one thing I love about Thomas Massey is he is as honest can get. He's telling you exactly the truth behind the bill. Now, it does cut. But see, what happens is, and this is how they lie to you. This is how they lie to you. People like Mike Johnson and all them, they're like, oh, we're cutting it. This is way better than the Senate bill. We're cutting the spending in this bill. Well, they are. They're giving tax breaks to Americans. Well, they are. But what they don't tell you is because they're not cutting enough, and because they're giving the tax break still out, it's actually going to cost us more. And it's going to add to the deficit. So if it adds $300 billion a year, again, let's go back to the Doge numbers. Doge hadn't cut $300 billion in 1 year yet. They're cutting a lot of jobs, and that will help over time. But if we're trying to balance out the scales, and we're already in a $2 trillion deficit, why do you think adding $300 billion more to try to cut another chunk of money is going to work? It's not. But this is how Congress works. They say, well, we're not going to spend like those Democrats. So they're just going to spend less. And both of them are over the target. Simple analogy. The money you make every week, say you make $1,000 a week. Let's just say, for instance, you make $1,000 a week. If you were spending $2,000 a week, you're well over budget. So what the Republicans come in and did is say, look, we cannot spend. I mean, that's $1,000 over a week. We can't spend that. We're going to cut the budget. We're only going to spend $1,300 a week. Wait, but we only make $1,000, remember? We're still going over $300. So that's how Congress spends this, and that's how these Republicans are spending it right now. They're saying, look, we're going to cut the budget. We're going to do better than the Democrats. Well, they are. They're not lying there. But what they're not telling you is they're still not balancing out the budget. They're still not covering the budget like they're supposed to, and they're still not cutting like they're supposed to. They're just cutting the extra spending that the Democrats wanted, but ultimately still spending money. Now, they're spending it as, well, the Democrats are not wanting to cut your taxes. They're wanting to still tax Social Security, a tax on tips, and overtime. Again, there's nothing in this bill that actually verbatim says those things are going to take place, line out by line out. Now, they may can spin it that way, but what we're actually seeing is still waste, fraud, and corruption. I'm sorry. And I hate to tell you that, but it's the truth. As a conservative Republican, this bill sucks. It sucks less than what the Democrats or the Senate want to pass, but it still sucks. I'm tired of having lesser evil choices. I want better choices. So, is debt bad? Not necessarily, if it's manageable debt. But when you have 2 mega billionaires and 1 mega bank telling you we're in volatility and that the markets cannot withstand, and the tariff talks are scaring a little bit to the world, so therefore everybody's stockpiling gold. And it shows the economy is actually starting to hurt because we're not overly spending as a government, then we better do something about it. Remember what Elon said just a few days ago. And again, you don't have to trust him, but listen to what he said. He's an ultra-billionaire. He knows what he's talking about. If we don't cut at least $1 trillion in a quick amount of time, Americans' economy cannot make it. The only hope, an honest truth, and this is not Elon's quote, but the only hope, you better hope that gold's there. And you better hope that they can start reevaluating the gold to make a bigger asset. And you better hope Trump does the Keystone XL pipeline like he talked about yesterday. Again, you're building industry, you're building manufacturing, you're building jobs for things that's in our ground that would help us move the energy and have independence. Again, something that we can sell like we're doing with the natural gas, like we're doing with the deal with Ukraine. But remember, Trump and Elon said this yesterday, people are like, oh, you're doing a great job. The popularity for Doge is actually bigger than it's ever been. And he's actually, even though he gets a lot of pushback, Doge is actually more popular as a concept with Democrats and Republicans. Here's the problem, though. Here is the problem. They can only do so much. They have to have Congress's help. They have to. But there's only one that's actually standing up for Americans in that Congress, and that is Thomas Massey. Love him or hate him, he's just as honest as he can be. He said the bill doesn't actually conserve anything. It doesn't cut anything. He said it cuts less spending than what the Democrats are doing, but he said we're still spending more than we make. How is that conservative? And that is why we do what we do. That is why we prepare. That is why we have to try to do and take care of our communities first, and our homes first, and our families first, because what we actually see in these bills are really not benefiting the majority of Americans. Not because they're trying to give the wealthy tax breaks. That has nothing to do with it. Don't let them spin it that way. But the fact is, they're still spending money we don't have. Remember? I make $1,000 a week. I spend $2,000. Okay, I can't do that anymore. I make $1,000 a week. Let's cut it. I'll spend $700 less. So I'm cutting my budget $700. But the story is, you're actually still spending $300 more than you make. We've got to get out of that mindset. Or you're not going to have the reset that I'm talking about going back to a gold standard and reevaluating our currency and taking things into consideration. You're going to see breadlines, bank failures, and a depression if we're not careful. Don't let these congressmen, Republican or Democrat, spin this story and to tell you that we should always sign these bills. What did I say yesterday? We send people to Washington to overregulate us and to take our money. It makes no sense, does it? Sadly, I think there's only usually a handful of people that's really standing up for us when it comes to our legislative branch. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this story. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I hope the gold is there. I believe if the gold is missing, we're in a way bigger problem than you can even imagine. But if the gold is there, then we need to reevaluate. Treasury needs to step in and start finding ways to back our currency on something way more than just the trust of the government. They need to back it on the gold. Reevaluate the gold. Make the gold skyrocket. The banks are buying gold for that reason, I believe, too. The central banks are buying gold for that reason, too. And not only that, there's a lot of nations that have gold that if we reevaluated the dollar to the gold standard, I actually believe most of the countries would be completely excited about that, because then they have something tangible that they can trade as a commodity to truly see the value of their dollars and also their currency and also the fact of all the gold they have in stockpile. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this. This could be one of the biggest stories ever if the gold is not there. Or this could be one of the best situations ever if we reevaluated the gold and actually brought it up to today's value. This could be one of the biggest problems we ever had if we don't cut enough and find the gold. Lots going on. It's a fun week. Let's see what happens with Patel and Bondi. Are they going to actually release the stuff? With the audit, is it actually going to happen? And ultimately, I really hate to see this bill get signed. And I bet you it gets signed. I bet you they'll negotiate. And sadly, it's still a bunch of fluff. Let me know your thoughts. God bless.